So competitive intelligence means that you are trying to outline the entire competitive landscape about the market that you're studying. Means that you are studying the competitors in depth about what are their products and services, their offerings, what are their updates, what are they developing, what is in their pipeline. So essentially in the drug development industry, you are going to study these competitors by going to their websites. And not just that, you also have to have an understanding about the regulatory landscape that is out there, what is the patent landscape that is out there, etc. So depending upon the scope and your research question, there will be different sources that you will be referring to. But one of the most important things that we do in competitive intelligence is to first understand our competitors better. And how do you start doing that? First, obviously we go to their website and see what are they doing, what are their products, what are they developing, what are their news and updates, right? So for an example purpose, let's take AbbVie as one of our competitors. So we could go to their website and check the news releases, events, and if they are a publicly listed company, then you could also explore their financials. So every publicly listed company is obliged to release their financials 4 times in a year, right? So for one for each quarter, there will be Q1, there will be Q2, which is the half yearly release of their financials and earnings. There will be Q3, and then there will be Q4 plus annual report. So somewhere on their website, you should be able to find out that there is an investors section or investor relations section. All right, we'll circle back to this, but we also want to know about their pipeline, right? We want to understand what are their products. So that is there on the products page, what is already there in the market, so you could explore that. Correct. And depending upon which therapy area you are targeting, you will look at those particular products. Correct. Now AbbVie is a big company, they are developing a lot of drugs and they're across multiple therapy areas, but depending upon what you are comparing, you could review those things there. Another thing that we could take a look at is what are they developing, right? How does their R&D pipeline look like? That gives us a nice picture that are we going to have competition from some other product that is going to be coming into the market future when your product would also land in the market. You'll see different assets listed over here and in which phase of the clinical development they are currently. Now, this is not the only way to look at all the drugs and their status in the clinical development. You could also alternatively go to clinicaltrials.gov and filter out for this particular sponsor, which is AbbVie, and see what are the different studies that they are currently undertaking. So let's take a look at that as well in a minute. When you land on clinicaltrials.gov page, you could see there are different filters that are provided to you on the left hand side. We can scroll down and find there will be a field for input for the sponsor name, right? And I'm gonna write AbbVie over here and apply the filters. So these are all the studies that AbbVie is currently running. Of course, AbbVie is a big company, like I said, so they are running multiple studies over here. But you could narrow down to your therapy area by choosing different filters or keywords over here, right? You could write down those keywords over here, and if you're familiar with the mesh terminologies in PubMed, then you could use that as well to properly narrow down your results and find what are the different studies that AbbVie is currently funding. So from here, you have a good picture about what are the products that the company is already having in the market and what are they developing. You could also look at the patents database to have very early picture about what the company is developing, but that is in itself a complex and a whole separate topic for the discussion. So we'll not go into the details of that, but keep in mind that that is also done as a part of the competitive research. Another thing that we have to look and we want to look is about their financial health. So we'll go back to our investors link, and here you will see that they are talking about their financials, the resources and events and governance. What we are interested in is their financials and events. Now usually these financials are released via earnings calls. So first, that is the first time that they talk about their earnings in the public space, and from that they release reports which come out as financial releases and annual reports, right? So if you go to the events tab, you will see that they have conducted the first quarter 2026 earnings conference call and they have provided the report as well. So if we are going to click at the report over here, In the report, you will see there is a lot of text explaining how the company has done quantitatively throughout this particular period, which is the first quarter. But you could also scroll down and directly go to the table where they are reporting their revenues. You'll see that across different therapy areas that they are working on and the different assets that they have provided the exact revenue that they have made. So this is a very important piece of information that you will ever have while doing market research and competitive intelligence research. All right. So they have said that across US this has been their business, and across all the other international markets this has been their business. Companies may have separate preferences on how they report this, but essentially across their business landscape they report at some level, right, that what has been their net revenue if they are in the public domain. You're not required to understand what is the reported versus operational and net revenue. That is a topic for later discussion, but you should understand that this information fuels two things, and they're really very important questions in terms of market research. One is that they help you understand the market share of a competitor, right? Because you know this competitor is earning this much, and if you know what is your universe size, essentially you could take the ratio and find out what is the percentage share of this competitor in the market. And the second thing is that, let's say qualitatively or by assumption or through your primary research, by talking to different KOLs or conducting surveys, you found out that, let's say AbbVie has a market share of 70 to 80% in the immunology space. That enables you to extrapolate that number to 100% and say, okay, my market size should be this much. Okay, so there are multiple ways, basically two ways to estimate a market: a top-down approach and a bottom-down approach, and we could discuss that more in detail in the future videos. But this competitive intelligence research also, in a way, can give you one insight into your universe market size. Okay. Now, like we discussed in our earlier videos also, that we are not just looking at the current market landscape, we also want to predict in the future. So in these earnings reports and earnings calls, they also discuss about the reason that why they are reporting these numbers, why do they see these numbers, what was the operational reason behind it, what was the market reason behind that, right? So those trends and how they are interlinked with the revenue that they are providing or they are displaying in their reports, they will provide that, and that helps you generate your insights. On top of that, you could explain the numbers, right, and you could predict the future trends. You could give a quantitative number to that, that how this company is going to grow in future, because they will release that what are their expected earnings for the whole year, right? And based on that and the trends that you have understood from the market, and based on the primary and secondary research that you have done, triangulating all of that insight and providing a quantitative number that I think this market or this competitor is going to grow at X% in the future, or maybe not. It's not at all going to grow. It's going to be static, maybe 0 to 2%, or maybe it's going to decline due to unfavorable impacts or unfavorable trends that are in the back end, right? So this enables you to do that kind of prediction and forecasting in the future. Now, another thing that AbbVie has done is really nice, that they have provided their entire pipeline update in a separate report. So if you go and click on that, they are reporting that in this first quarter, everything that has happened with all the assets across their pipeline, they are going to discuss that over here. So you could essentially look at your therapy area of interest and understand what are the different updates that have happened, what are the key pipeline events that have happened. So I hope this gives you a nice flavor about what competitive intelligence is all about. This was a very brief and simplified overview. Essentially, this takes major chunk of your time when you do market research, and not always do you have all the pieces of information that we discussed freely available. But that's where your primary research comes into picture, and your analytical assumptions, your logical assumptions, and stitching information pieces from different sources together. And you have to be a detective if you're doing market research, right? Because if people know everything from secondary research, if all the information is out there, nobody's going to come to you that tell me what is this market about, how big is this market, or how should I launch my company in this space. If everything is freely available, nobody needs a market researcher. You get questions only when the information is not that freely available outside, or maybe very little information is available, but you are required to draw in your domain expertise and your research skills and your detective skills to find out those pieces of information from the cues that you could think about, the resources you could think about, and stitch them together in the form of a cohesive logical story that enables the decision making, right? So we'll discuss more in the upcoming videos, but I believe this might have been an interesting learning session for you.